Good evening, everyone. This is the big show, the one you don't want to miss. We've been waiting for a very long time to get our special guest tonight. It is, of course, the legend that is David Perel. David, it's
Hey,
fantastic to have you on the show. How are you tonight?
Hugh, thank you so much. I'm very good, thank you.
It's been such an incredible year. I remember when I interviewed you earlier on at the start of the year, and you said you had some very exciting things coming up, but you couldn't say at the time. So I kind of
Yes,
wondered, oh, I'm sure that will be good information. We'll wait to hear what it was. And to be fair, with all the things happening, we'd kind of put it on the side. And I thought, I wonder what's happening. And then all of a sudden, this explosion of news in sim racing, the SimGrid was launched. Tell
yes.
me, how did that all come about, and what was the kind of motivation behind it?
Years of motivation and thinking about it for a very long time. But COVID kind of kicked things into gear, if you will.
Mhm.
And basically, at the beginning of the year, I was reading a book about statistics in the stock market, which I know is weird, but anyway. And I started to think about statistics in sim racing, how it didn't really exist. um, and how you could, like, what's the motivation of having a business around statistics in sim racing. And I started to realize that there is a business model. If you There's an app for running called Strava, and it tracks your runs. And if you go to their premium service, you get a whole bunch of stats about your heart rate and everything around it. And my brother's totally addicted to it. So I was like, oh, maybe there's something there. So then I started to look around at sim racing communities to
Mhm.
see if I could invest in one of them. And things didn't quite go as planned, but it was already brewing around December time. Um,
Ah,
and I just kind of putting feelers out to see what was going on. And then during COVID, I launched Coach Dave Academy,
uh-huh.
like 3 days after lockdown, basically. Um, and with the help of a friend, James Parker, who does all the setups. He leads the setup team now at Coach Dave Academy. And then I was very lucky because when a racing driver who does not have a factory seat, like, I'm not a factory driver, I'm a professional, which means I get paid to race, but I only get paid when I'm racing.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
So I get paid for each day I'm at the racetrack. So during COVID, we weren't getting I wasn't getting paid anything. And prior to COVID was the off season. So the
Yeah,
last time I was paid for racing was in like November at Kyalavi.
yeah, yeah.
So I was thinking, I need to do something. So it was out of necessity. And Coach Dave went quite well,
Uh-huh.
because I started to coach a lot because of the sim racing explosion. What happened was people in the real motorsport world had nothing to do.
Yeah.
So they came to sim racing, but it wasn't just the real racing drivers. It was like autosport.com, motorsport.com, sportscar 365. The top publications had no racing to report on, so they turned their attention to sim racing. And through all of that, I was able to do enough coaching that I could still make a living.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and then I decided to use some of that. I saved some of that money to Redline Motorsports. Do you remember them? They were a very big ACC community. They had a very cool website,
Uh-huh.
and their community shut down. And I eventually bought the source code of the original website from the developer, the
All
person who
right.
made RLM.
Uh-huh.
And I took what he had and I changed the design completely, um, and launched the SimGrid because I want this. My ultimate dream has always been to, well, my overriding dream is to blur the lines between sim racing and real racing. That's
Yeah,
been
yeah,
my thing so my whole life.
yeah,
Well, not my whole life, but since I was like 16ish, when
yeah.
I started to use Gran Turismo to improve my karting.
Mhm.
So I've always like wanted to have a league racing website. It's impossible these days if you um, don't have iRacing. If you're using rFactor or ACC, it's very difficult to find competitive leagues online
Yeah,
unless you're in those communities already or someone introduces you. It's
yeah.
very difficult to find a community in the first place.
Huh.
This very low level of discoverability. So I encountered this myself when I started to get really involved in the PC racing side and
Yeah, yeah.
moving away from console.
Mhm.
So I wanted the SimGrid to fix that. And now it's going quite well. I mean, it doesn't make any money. It just costs money. But people get to race there for free on ACC. And I have a team of people who organize everything. And we kind of have a race. My ultimate dream is to have races every day. But at the moment, there's like a race like twice a week. And we had a really successful championship with the more female races. We're running our World Cup as well, which everything that we're doing this year is an experiment for what I hope will be a bigger step next year. So I managed to extend my contract with Thrustmaster, my endorsement agreement, and I'm using all of that money to invest back into the SimGrid. I want to make the racing for free for everyone. Obviously, there's going to be limitations and stuff, but you can race for free, and I'll figure out a business model around what it means, when you get results and everything. Like maybe there's something there. I'm pretty sure that season 2 of the World Cup, maybe we'll charge an entry fee. We don't know yet. We're still figuring it out, but it's been really exciting to give something to the sim racing community. And also I really hope that we can build something which it's where sim racers can come and interact, and it's easy to find, because this is the one thing that I want to fix is, unless you know the Discord community, you're not going to find a sim race that you can compete in.
Yeah, so I only found out about Discord when I interviewed Josh Martin, and because he told me what he started filling out all these names of different things, and I looked at them blankly as to what they were. But that's because I'm more of a console player than a PC player. But I mean, the SimGrid has really taken the whole sim racing community by storm. I mean, you've had full grids, lots of close racing, lots of big accidents and all sorts of stuff. It's great to watch.
It's brilliant.
But and it's a fantastic formula. And I was speaking to Thea, the Amazons, and of course helped to train her and get her involved in lots of the female championship. It's really open and widespread, which is wonderful. And I think it really has impressed an awful lot of people. And I think from a lot of supporters who we play our games because ultimately we would love to be what you are and drive the real cars. And this gives us the best chance of having that experience. And do you think that once, perhaps maybe when the COVID thing hopefully it goes and we can start going back to track days and race days and things like that, you could maybe do a kind of event perhaps at a track, because there are a lot of sim racing events that go on near tracks or alongside big events like that.
That is my one of the goals is to, so basically what happens now is if you want to become a racing driver, most people start at karting, but karting even these days is super, super, super expensive. I want to prove to people that you can start at sim racing and either go the karting route after that, or Formula 4, or like a cheap touring car. And in order to do that, I want to create a consistent, I want to connect the dots in a way like, we had the GT Academy where the winner got to go racing.
Yeah.
I want that to happen all the time on the SimGrid, where let's just say like there's a relationship with the team that I have. And if you win the Sprint Cup, the Endurance Cup, or the World Cup, you get to drive those cars. And if you do well there, you get to become a racing driver. That's like the grand plan for enabling sim races to become. I don't know how long it will take for that to happen, because obviously it will cost a lot of money, but that's where I want us to get to. That's my ambition. And I remind the guys every day. I say I want world-class production and, world-class racing and everything, but I want us to always think about how do we become one of the best sim racing destinations and it's not just for pros. This is so important because the pros know where Discord is. They know where all those things are. They are part of pro teams. I want it to be for amateurs as well, because when I moved from Gran Turismo to ACC, I technically was an amateur in the PC racing world, and I knew nothing, And I also, like you, I only discovered Discord at the beginning of this year. So
it's a completely different thing, isn't it? It's quite it's amazing how it has all come about, and that's the wonderful and exciting thing. Now, I remember in one of my previous interviews, you said to me that your kind of recommendations for those of you who are playing GT Sport, go in for about, I think it was about 90 minutes and do 3 races, a bit of practice and 3 races, and then that was it, leave it for that.
Yes.
Yes. Do you still go along with that, or has it changed
Yes.
now that you're doing more PC racing?
No, same rule. Sometimes I go up to 2 hours. Recently with COVID, with real racing starting again, I've had very little time for the sim, but when I do go on the sim, I don't play for more than 90 minutes, unless, of course, I'm doing an endurance race, which has been organized. But in terms of the practice stuff, 90 minutes. And I still do my baseline tests. So I don't know if I told you that last time, but you should always start with like a 5-lap run at a car and track you always use. Yeah. And determine, today I beat my best lap ever in this combination. I must mean that I'm in for a good day. Or you go a little bit slower. So you're like, okay, so today I'm 2 or 3 tenths off. Both are okay. Both are fine. But at least you have that baseline test to know how your day is going to progress. And by using the same racetrack to start the day, same racetrack, same car, you can be like, okay, today it seems that I'm struggling with my braking, because that's the variable that's gone out of sync with what you expect on your baseline. So I still do that as well. And it's boring. The baseline test is always boring. It's 5 laps of a track, and for me, it's Barcelona in the 48. And I'm sick of Barcelona. I also do all the coaching I do is at Barcelona, because it's got a hairpin, chicane, a high-speed corner, S-bend. It's got everything you need. Yeah. I'm like, it's very good for coaching and very good for baseline test.
Whenever I see that come through on GT Sport, though, I go, oh no, not Barcelona. It's kind of. I prefer Dragons.
For me, it's what's it? Brazil, Interlagos in a Group 3. Just please no. That's when I close it. Or the worst is Nürburgring in daily race B, which is 1 lap. It's not a race. It's not a race.
That's it.
One
of the ones one of my favorite was in Mark 1 original Golf GTIs going around the Nürburgring GP circuit, and that was great fun because it was hard.
The slower the car, the more fun it is. The slower the car, the more fun it is. Yes.
Yeah, that was great fun. So would you say that that's the 90 minutes for GT Sport? How does it work for someone who's maybe playing a Assetto Corsa Competition on the PC? Is there if that's what somebody likes, how would you what would you recommend for that line?
Same. I still now these days I spend more time on ACC. So I still do my 90-minute warm-up on ACC in Barcelona. The difference with the PC sims is that you have to do your own setup. So that's also why Coach Dave started to sell setups, because to fix something for me. I don't do the setups on Coach Dave Academy. It's real professional sim racers do them, because they are the best guys for that game. If you wanted a real life setup for Ferrari, then you can call me. But I didn't have the time to first spend time on the setup and then go practice and then go race. I wanted to get the setup from a mate. So that's where James came in. I was coaching James because he contacted me for coaching, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's so quick, much quicker than me in the game. And then coincidentally, I heard him on Chris Hayes' YouTube channel talking about setup, and I thought, oh, he knows what he's talking about. And I said, hey, James, I've been having this idea of creating a business around setups for ACC. It already exists in iRacing, but I couldn't find it for ACC. Maybe we can do something. So these days, I just use the setups that they make for us. Luckily for me, I got and it's been cool as well, because I've been able to give sim racers an opportunity to make money from sim racing, which is very rare. I mean, most sim racers race for free, so it's cool to be able to give some of the guys an opportunity. And then there's now at Coach Dave Academy, there's James and 2 other drivers. So they're all pro sim drivers now, and 4 engineers. The engineers rotate because they have real engineering jobs. So it depends on their free time to make these setups. And that's what I use. So that cuts down on the necessary practice time. That being said, if your aim is to learn setups, don't buy a setup. Do the setup yourself.
Yeah.
Because it depends what you want to achieve in your practice session, Hugh. So if you want to achieve becoming the best at the Nürburgring GP track, still only spend 90 minutes, do 5 lap runs. If your aim is to improve your concentration, then do a very short warm-up and then a long stint immediately, like of 30 minutes without stopping. If your aim is to improve qualifying, then schedule in that 90-minute session. I don't know how long it would take, but schedule some 3 lap runs, out lap, 2 flying laps, in lap, out lap, 2 flying laps, in lap. So your warm-up is going to take about 20 minutes. So whatever's left for the 70 minutes, schedule that out. And that's how everyone should approach it. Especially what I've been coaching more and more is that if you are training for a marathon, you don't go out every morning and try and beat your marathon record, because by day 3 you'll be destroyed. But in sim racing, all we want to do is beat our best lap. But it's the same thing. By always trying to beat our best lap, we essentially lose. We practice bad habits, because when you're trying to beat your best lap, you're often going to make mistakes on that lap before you can actually get the perfect lap, which doesn't exist. But up until that point, you're going to miss apexes, you're going to brake too late. All those little mistakes build up. But if you drive at 90% for like a week, get used to the muscle memory of the track, of the car, and then try beat the lap record, you'll see a better result, because you've got better reference points, you're much more disciplined, you're able to measure, if at this corner, if my reference point's the 100 board, when I'm really pushing, I can brake at 95 meters instead of 92 meters, because that will make the difference when you're trying to beat your ultimate record. But most of the time, what we try and do is marathon, trying to beat our marathon record, just getting injuries in the sim racing world. So, yeah.
No, that's the thing. And a big question that's come up, and then I'll start doing some of the other questions as well. Because, I mean, this is what people are really looking for, because it's true. I think if you drive too long, you just get tired, and then you just don't drive that well. I think that's especially true of when you stream a lot, and people who do a lot of gaming, and they're just doing race after race after race. And I think it can get harder, or they just lose concentration, and then in turn they're not going to be doing the best racing as they possibly could. The big question that has come up: penalties on GT Sport. Now, I know you've been very busy driving real racing cars to see what's been happening, maybe perhaps in GT Sport. It's been a bit crazy. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, I do. It's a brief one. It's simple. They have turned their attention to GT7. GT Sports is just dying a slow death right now. And I don't blame them. PlayStation 5 is coming out in, October? It's coming out in November.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to miss whatever original deadline they had, because it's Gran Turismo. So they don't want to spend too much time focusing on GT Sports. They gathered as much data as they could. And now we're left with this penalty system, which is like, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. That's the one thing I don't understand is
how can it
the
get
penalty
so bad?
system never improved. It just got more sensitive, more like ludicrous, where people bump you from behind, you get the 3-second penalty. 5-second penalty. It's a shame, and it stopped me from. Eventually, it wore me down as well, where I stopped playing Gran Turismo online. I still have fun offline, but online, I see a daily race which I really want to do, and it's just a penalty fest. And look, let me put it to you this way: I can't wait for GT7. I really genuinely can't wait. I've pre-ordered a PlayStation 5, like everyone. Well, not everyone else, but those who are.
To get one.
Yeah, look, Amazon said it. I got it.
Oh, that's good.
If it actually gets sent.
Yeah.
And I bought it for one reason only, and that was GT7. Apparently, you can play ACC on it. I want to see the performance.
Yes,
but
that's nice that you can be able to play other PlayStation 4 games on it too, which is good. That's fantastic. Well, I've got a lot of questions, so I'll fire them to you. And we've got Thea from the Amazons is here, and also her fiance as well is here. But we've got questions. Our first question, it was actually Rory who wrote this before the stream even started. He said, first question for Dave. I was wondering if Dave could have any drive in all of GT racing, what would it be, with what team, and with what teammate he says he is available, and also what car?
So for me, the ultimate dream is always to race with Ferrari in the factory team. That's what gets me up in the morning. Two things get me up in the morning in terms of being a real racing driver. The one is to race Le Mans. That's the ultimate thing for me. But I believe that racing at Le Mans is achievable and a realistic goal to pursue. Whereas racing for Ferrari in the factory team is almost close to impossible. But it's, you got to be ridiculously ambitious. So if I could race with Ferrari officially at any race, really, in a GT car, I'm a massive GT fan. For me, I already race in my favorite kind of series. So of course, it'll be cool to race in an LMP2 or LMP1, but none of that bothers me. Racing the GTE, for example, is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And if it could be in the factory team, that would be great. And I don't know who my teammates would be, Nick Foster and Davide Arrigon, I suppose.
Yeah, that was the thing. I remember going to the Festival of Speed a few years ago, and we actually thought it was the Formula One car that was heading off one of the old ones, but it was the Ferrari Enzo FXX, and then they also had the LaFerrari, and the noise, the incredible noise, and the rev range that just boomed up. We kind of ran to the hay bales to try and get a glimpse of what it was as it headed off, because you could recognize the Ferrari sound of these incredible engines.
The FXX is crazy. I drove an FXXK at Paul Ricard, and I'm still upset with myself because you have to press the button, the KERS button, to release the electric energy, and I forgot. I just forgot. And the rest of it was just bonkers.
Is it as loud as it seems? Because even when you watch the in-car...
No, not inside the car. Not inside, no.
Quieter, yeah.
But the GT3s are so loud. I didn't have proper... usually the headphones that we use in the car are molded to our ears, and I forgot them. So I had another set which you just kind of pop in. They're not molded to your ear or anything. And we just did a 2-day test at Spa, and we did a night. Included in the test was a night test as well. So I got home to the hotel 30 minutes after being in the car, and my ears were ringing with the engine noise until it felt like the morning. It was so loud. It's crazy. You don't hear that in the LaFerrari FXX. It's a bit softer for some reason, even though it's beautiful sounding engine. It's just not the same.
That's incredible, isn't it? That the GT. I mean, I remember watching it from the Renault stand last year at Silverstone as you went round for your 3-hour race back in May, and I was impressed actually because the sound was loud. The Audis were very loud, and the
Audis are beautiful. One of my favorites sounds from GT is actually when the Audi accelerates into its pit limiter. I'm not going to do it on the stream. Every time I see the Audi leave the box and it makes that sound, I'm like, oh, it sounds so angry and aggressive.
I know. It's great fun to watch. It was great fun. Now, we've got a question as well from Josh Martin, a good friend of yours there as well.
Yes.
And he has said to me, Hugh, do you think you could beat Dave? And I said, well, I don't. I would left to think, what at? Would it be a race? I think you're going to lap me on a 1-lap race. But could you do something? I mean, you've had skill for many, many years. And one of the other questions we had was, how did you get started? Because that's a big question that we have. How did your motor racing and your kind of drive to be a racing driver, how did it begin?
Long story. But basically, I wanted to be a racing driver my whole life. So when I was born, I found my dad's motorbike helmet, used to wear it around the house. My parents would freak out. And then I found a picture around the age of 3 or 4 of my dad standing next to a Formula Ford. I was like, what's that about? Oh, no, your dad tried to race for 3 years in the UK. What? He was a racing driver? Yeah, he hated it. And that was it. I wanted to be like my dad, but except I wanted to love racing. So my dad didn't want me to race. He discouraged me as much as he could, and he didn't take me to racetrack or anything. But one of our family friends, coincidentally, was doing karting, and he offered to take me. And it was a total coincidence. I was so detached from racing, I didn't know karting existed, really. That was like I was 13 or 14. And he took me to the kart track, and he let me drive the kart like a few months later, and I was hooked. So my dad reluctantly bought us like a really secondhand kart. It was 2,500 rand. No, it was 5,000 rand, which is about 200 pounds, 250 pounds. And I used that for a year. And my dad said, look, until you're 18, I'll pay for this hobby of yours. And it really was, in his mind, a hobby. I didn't get fresh tires or anything for every race or anything, but I was totally hooked. And I raced karts until I was 23. So when I turned 18, I started to pay for it myself. My brother and I, we were both racing at the time, both paid for it ourselves. And then I had to stop when I was 23 because I ran out of money. And it was a shame, but it is what it is. And started a business with my brother, which I focused on well, we'd already started when I was 20. So around the age of 20, we started this like website business, but we just made websites for like the neighbor and the guy down the road. It was nothing special. And all that money, that's how we paid for our karting. And then when I stopped karting, I said, okay, I'm going to take all that focus and dedication I had in karting and dedicate it to the business with my brother. So I literally moved into the office, moved the couch in front of the desk, worked flat out every day for years. My brother would come wake me up in the morning in the office, just keep working. And then I was saving up for one more go at racing. And when I turned 29, I was watching Le Mans, and it just hit me. I was like, I have to give it one more shot. And then I used all my savings to try get to Le Mans. Yeah. But I thought that Le Mans would cost like, I don't know,
hundreds of thousands. I would have thought, wasn't it?
No, I thought it would cost like 10 to 20,000 euros per driver. Yeah. And that's how much I'd saved over the 7 years. I'd saved about 10 or 20. No, I'd saved 15,000 euros. Yeah. And I thought, okay, maybe I can find another 5 to do Le Mans, and then I'm done. And they said to me, no, it's 300,000 euros per driver. So I was like, okay, I still want to do one race as a GT driver, because I've just done karting up till then, but I was a massive Gran Turismo fan. My favorite cars in the game were the GT cars. I wanted to experience what was it like to drive a heavy car on a big racetrack in Europe. Yeah. Yeah. And I managed to, through some help, get in touch with a team in Italy. It involved a lot of cold calling people, a lot of cold calling. For the Italian GT Championship, I got to race a Lamborghini at Imola. It took every euro of the 15,000 that I'd saved to pay for the seat. And then I arrived there and discovered I had to spend another 2,000 euros on a helmet. Goodness. That was valid, and I didn't have the money. So I used the team manager's helmet, a Montoya helmet, and did the race. And it was a coincidence. There was a lot of luck involved in this particular moment, because my engineer for that weekend, he was he wasn't meant to even be part of the team. He was a freelancer, but very old and experienced. Very, 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 very experienced. He'd worked with Christensen, Montoya, just a ton of names. His name was Gianfranco. And at the end of the weekend, it's like, okay, I did my karting when I was younger. I was quite successful, and now I've experienced GT. I'm done. Gonna come home, carry on with my life. And he said, well, I almost finished on the podium that weekend in the GT race, my first one, and actually helped their team defend their championship lead. So I was actually behind the championship leader, which happened to be my teammate, the whole race, defending for him from a Porsche behind. And he said, yeah, you have the talent to become a professional. And I was like, I've heard that so many times in my life. It literally just bounced off me, honestly. We were having some pizza. I was like, thank you for that, Gianfranco. I'm going to go back to my life. He says, I'll call you. If there's any other opportunities, I'll call you. And I was like, yeah, I've also heard that 100 times in my life, so I didn't get my hopes up. Came back to South Africa, and 2 months later, I got a call to go race Lamborghini Super Trofeo World Finals in Malaysia, and my co-driver was going to be Mirko Bortolotti. And if anyone who's watching knows who Bortolotti is, he's one of the best GT drivers in the world. So I went, and I had brake failure. We were leading the race, the World Finals, leading the race, brake failure. Sorry, it wasn't the World Finals, it was the European Finals. I'm sorry, but it takes place at the World Final event. This is important. Had brake failure, broke my leg. The team blamed me. They said I'll never race again. And then ironically, that same team phoned me the next year and offered me a seat. And then that's where it really started to kick off. So I signed a contract with them, and the contract said I had to pay 100,000 euros to race with them, and I didn't have 1,000 euros, but I signed it anyway. And then I just made a plan. I winged it, completely winging it, and then I winged it the next year and the next year, and then 3 years later I became professional. Someone started to pay me, and now I get paid to race. So it is a long story. That's the content version.
That's fantastic, though. I mean, because most people faced with $100,000 bill every year would be struggling at the best of times and think, how are you going to overcome that? But when the dream, I suppose,
is a huge risk. I don't recommend. Whenever someone's like, "So what did you do?" So I'm like, "Well, just don't do what I did," because I was taking unbelievable risks in terms of financially. Like the first year was 100,000 euro contract. The second year was 150, and the third year was another 150, and the fourth year was 50, but it never actually materialized. In the end, I didn't have to pay the 50. In the end, she got paid. So, and every time I signed that contract, I didn't have even €1 to do it. Honest to God. I didn't have anything to my name because I'd sold it in the first year when I signed the 100K contract. I sold my car. I sold everything I had. Was living at my friend's house. When I moved to England in 2017, I could fit everything in a bag. Okay, it's too small for the screen, but like a big-ish bag. I carried that in my helmet to England, and I remember arriving in this apartment. There was no bed, there was no curtains, and now I have a bed and curtains. But there's so many times. There's so many times when I was stressed like hell, but it worked out.
That is something I think anyone who's in a business that's on the rocks knows, that feeling of trying to pay the bills and trying to keep things running, keep it all going. And I think that the stress level when the money situation comes in is going to be very, very hard indeed. So no, that is really something. Now we've got quite a few viewers who are actually in the SimGrid and who have we've got people like Josh Martin who's been watching, and also we've got Thea as well. Now they're all they've been doing well in different races. I know Josh finished 4th last week at Bathurst, I think it was.
And did an amazing drive. Amazing drive.
We've got him coming a week on Friday, a week tomorrow. He's coming on the show as well. What would you say to to these drivers who are in the SimGrid doing an awful lot of practice, lots of different racing? Is there any advice that you would have for them? Because I think they would also perhaps like to drive in a real racing car as well and do a real racing driver. What would be your advice to them?
The biggest thing is that people think that it's all about proving how talented you are on the racetrack. But what a lot of people don't, I suppose the wrong word, but I'll use it. What they don't respect is that the drivers who are being paid to race are talented. That is the minimum thing that you need to get to become a pro, to race in real life. You have to have talent. So being talented does not differentiate you. It does not differentiate you from everyone else on the grid. So proving that you can overtake someone, okay. In Blancpain, it's called GT World Challenge now, on a grid of 60 cars, there's 3 drivers per car. So at least 60 of them can overtake. They can do fast laps. They've all won races. They've all been on pole positions at some point in their life. So it's not your speed that defines you as a professional. It's all the things around that. So the driving, if you have the talent to race and drive a car fast, that's easy. That's the easy part. Of course, finding the final few tenths is a lot of hard work, but the hard part is the work that goes on around it, finding the money to get there, being friendly and personable to your engineers, being humble enough to coach gentlemen drivers. All of those things which don't come naturally to any of us, that's the working part, which defines what a professional actually is. And that's why sometimes people will wonder, why is that guy who's always finishing 20th still being paid to race? Well, the racing part is 2 hours, but we spend, for example, for Spa, we arrive on Monday. You don't see from Monday to Saturday when the race starts how much work is involved as a driver. And teams really value it when a driver is not just fast, because they can find any fast drivers. They can, what they value is your work ethic around being fast.
Yeah. No, that is something else, because I think as well, I mean, with the coaching aspect, that's kind of the next thing, because obviously people take part in the sim grid. They're trying to do their best. They want to be as fast as they can. You've now started, obviously, Coach Dave Academy has been going for quite some time, and I spoke to one of your first pupils, which was Rascal Rabbit, all the way from Australia. And
he was
and
the
he was
second guy.
well, the second year, Kevin, and he had wonderful things to say and absolutely recommended it. And he was, he said he came from a point where he was really struggling to get time, and thanks to your help, you really managed to get his times really good. And in fact, he said he was as good as you could get on Gran Turismo, which is a great thing indeed. So how would someone get in contact with you if they wanted to join the Coach Dave Academy and get some lessons for you? How do they do that?
That's easy. Just go coachdaveacademy.com and they can click on coaching and it's there. Admittedly, we're not the cheapest, but I knew that going in because, well, I'm sharing a lot of experience and stuff. But I think that we have a pretty good product. I mean, if there's other coaches which are at a very, very high level but are more affordable. But what I wanted to bring was the real life experience to sim racing. That's the value that I bring. Like the style of coaching I do is not based on data. It's based on fundamentals. So like how to drive a GT car fast. First, we need to understand like the how, and then start to chase the edge of the envelope, and then if you want to go to another level, like get coached by real sim racing pros, there's other guys out there like Nils and stuff who coaches on ACC.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. I think people know that it's going to cost money. It's going to cost a lot of money because it's an expensive sport, and you're paying for professional advice and help. That it's if you want the best health, you're probably going to go private, aren't you? If it was a very important,
that's true.
You're probably going
to
pay for that money, aren't you? You're going to do the thing to make sure you get the best advice. And that's why we strongly recommend your coaching and the whole SimGrid and Coach Academy, because it really is something very, very special. Now, obviously you can see the SimGrid, you can see all those people involved. Who would you say are the kind of hot shots that are coming up the field that look like they could be very good to win championships and to go further on?
It's a good question. I think that there's quite a few guys in there at the moment. And what I want to see though is we need to see more championships first before I can make that call. What was cool is, for example, when we first did our very first race, before it was called the SimGrid, it was a Coach Dave tournament. And there was a guy who was leading called Gregor Schill, and he got disconnected. He was either leading or in second, I think. And this poor guy, I just knew how he felt. Like he was devastated. And we managed to get hold of him again during the race. And I interviewed him during the race. And he, I could just feel like there was a lot of passion in him. And this was the thing. There's a full grid of very talented drivers there. But I could feel his passion. And he's now one of our test drivers at the Coach Dave Academy doing setup. So he became a professional essentially through just his work ethic and his character and everything, which is, again, I was like pulling from my experience from the real world and trying to apply that to elements of the sim racing world. And that's what I'm looking for at the SimGrid. So I'm actually very hands off at the SimGrid. I kind of like help define the sort of direction that we want to go in. But then Josh Martin and another guy, Michael Hamlet, sometimes James Parker comes in as well for advice. They run that show, and they have a team under them which operates the SimGrid. And I'm like, okay, guys, look, here's my vision. I want it to be XYZ. I help build the technology and design the website, and they operate it in terms of making sure the leagues are going and everything. And we have some really cool things coming in the pipeline. I want us to discover the next superstar of sim racing, which is bigger than the sport itself, you know? And it probably won't, well, maybe it could come from the SimGrid or another racing website like AOR or something. I'm not sure. But we haven't found that person yet, in my opinion, which will elevate the whole sport when they break out of the sim racing bubble. But the only way that we can find that person is if we give them the platform to do that. And that's where I want the SimGrid to come in. So you're going to have to ask me that question again in the future. And again, if I can, along obviously with Josh and Michael, help to build this thing in a way where we can offer real life seats and stuff, then we can really start to say, okay, this guy's consistently in the top 5, all women, by the way. We have the More Female Races Championship. And we want to pull them out and give them a shot in a real test next to a real racing driver. Let's see how they go and go from there.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, because it shows you that people can start racing in their on the console, eventually get onto PC, get onto ACC, develop themselves as a driver, and potentially they could be up there racing at the top of the best of their ability with real professionals. And who knows what could be in store for them when they can do well from that kind of racing. Now, I've saved the best till last, because I know just very quick before we started, I was congratulating you on that second place at Le Mans just literally a few weeks ago, and this was for the support race. Tell us, what on earth was it like to finish on the podium at Le Mans in front of, I mean, there was obviously people there, but it was just the fact you were on the podium at Le Mans. What was it like?
For me, it was completely surreal, because in 2014, just before I decided that I was going to come racing again, it started because I was sitting, I mean, I've always been a huge fan of Le Mans, and I've done virtual Le Mans for a very long time, on Gran Turismo and stuff. But I was sitting there and I saw this real racing driver at night standing in the pit lane, and the car was coming down the pit lane and was pulling into the box, and he was getting in. And I was like, imagine that feeling where you're at this race and you're about to get in the car at night and do a night stint. And, then I kept watching the race, and I dream about it every single day of my life to this day. Every step I take is like, how do I get to this race? And I'd raced for Kessel for 2 years. They compete in the race, and they kept saying, or some people at Kessel would say, Dave, we have a ticket for you, come watch the race. And I said, I'm not going there until I compete. And the team manager, her name is Tiziana, she's like, David, do not come until you compete, until you're there to compete. And this year, when I signed my deal with Kessel to race in European Le Mans, included in that was racing in the Le Mans Cup, and part of the Le Mans Cup is racing as a support event for Le Mans. And even then, I was like, I refused to believe that it was true, because on top of actually doing the race itself, I love the racetrack in the sim, and I wanted to know what that felt like to drive at that racetrack. So when we got there, I managed to sneak into the main pits. Because of the COVID rules, the support race was not allowed to interact with the main race. But I used someone else's pass. I blocked the face with my thumb, got scanned in. Kessel helped me sneak in. They obviously helped me sneak in. I walked down the pit lane. I saw the Toyotas, the Rebellion, the Bicolis, the Porsche factory team. And of course, I'd seen a lot of these cars and drivers already in my life, because I've been racing in GTs for 5 years. But it was still different being at Le Mans. And then I did a track walk, and I walked through the Dunlop chicane and then down over the hill, and I was emotional. I could not believe I was standing there at Le Mans. It just felt so far away, my whole life. So anyway, the first practice lap, I remember just being like, wow, like just getting onto Mulsanne straight, feeling every single bump. And the crazy thing was, Hugh, I've done a billion, trillion, zillion laps around here on the sim. But from every sim that's had it in the evolution of sim racing, I've done it, in each of those games. And it instilled a muscle memory in me where when I did race it in real life, by lap 2 or 3, it felt like I had done it in real life for my whole life. I mean, the bumps and the way that the steering wheel felt in my hands, the reference points in R Factor 2 were exactly the same reference points I used in real life. The little orange marking on the bollard here and this there, the feeling of the car through Porsche curves and how it felt through the steering wheel when you go over 2 bumps through the first right-hander, and in the change of direction, the way the car gets loose through the left. That all felt like R Factor. And a lot came from Gran Turismo, because Gran Turismo actually does have high fidelity in the force feedback when you touch bumps and curves. And, it was amazing. And then in the race itself, race 1, I was lying second, and then I got a huge, huge, huge battle with my championship rival, and he beat me, and I was so upset. I was really, really upset. Because it was such a tough race. We crossed the line. In race 1, we went into the final chicane side by side, and he came out in front. And then the next day was race 2, and I came out of the pits 30 seconds behind the leader, but they decided to go on new tires, which meant cold tires, and I decided to keep the tires of my teammate during the driver change. So I had hot tires. So I managed to catch up about 20 seconds on the first lap. So then there was a 10-second gap for the rest of the race that I had to make up. And I caught him into the final chicane, tried to go to the inside, and we crossed the line within 4/10. Wow. At the same time, I managed to break the lap record as well for GD3. So I was very proud of that, because, this is the only track I've ever wanted to race at. Like, truly, really wanted to race at. Racing at Spa was not on my list. Racing at Imola was not on the list. It was racing at Le Mans. And I know I didn't get to do the main race this year, but I've got to drive it. And the cool thing was, when I was in the podium, like pre-podium ceremony thing, which was very brief, but Anthony Davidson walks in, and he's chatting to Nicolas Manassian, who was, both of them racing Peugeot. Davidson's obviously raced everything. Manassian's done it 11 or 12 times. I can't remember. No, he said 17 times, because I asked him, and I was like standing there, and next to us was the official Le Mans trophies, because that was all part of in the trophy area where you go into the podium. And I was like, this cannot be real. It can't be real. So that's how I felt. I felt like it was surreal, like on a level that I still struggle to compute, that I actually, because when I came back to racing, I was nothing. I had no connections. I was cold calling teams, cold calling. And then, I was chatting to 2 LMP1 drivers, standing right next to the Le Mans trophy. It was completely ridiculous. Still is completely ridiculous.
For a week after that, isn't it? Because you get on such a mental high.
I was, yeah.
It's hard to
still doing laps. Yeah, I'm still doing laps of the track. It was so weird, because often after a race, I just switch off from the race. And I was so aware this time that I kept, when I was going to bed, the whole week afterwards, I kept going through the final lap where I was catching the other guy, Caldarelli. It was just, that's the impact it had on me. And it felt, sometimes if you get to experience something that you've chased your whole life, or you meet your hero, it's a letdown. But I told my family it's 10,000 times better than I actually imagined. And that was weird.
Well, it sounds like man and machine and track are perfectly matched for you there at Le Mans. And who knows, perhaps in the next couple of years, you'll be the next league up there and getting to do even something, even on the big day. But it sounds absolutely incredible to not only to be able to race at Le Mans, but to get on the podium as well and to do what you've done. It's fantastic. You've got fans across the globe. I think they love you as well for your honesty, for the emotion, and just your ability to come up with phenomenal ideas, that really work incredibly well, that get you out there, whether it be racing or, right up there in the sim grid. It's absolutely fantastic. I know you're on a very tight schedule, and that's coming up to nearly 50 minutes. So I want to make sure that we do our time properly, and that you're not delayed with any other meetings that I know you have to do. But to everyone who's been watching, it's been an absolute privilege to have David Perel on the show tonight, a legend who has won. I was saying to David earlier on, about 5 sheets worth of podiums and victories and all sorts here from the years of racing that you've done. It's an honor for us to be able to have you on the show. And I'm sure that the people who've been watching tonight will take those tips for sim racing. They now know how to get to the sim grid. They know how to get to Coach Dave Academy. So I hope that they'll be lining up and they'll be filling the diaries up for you to do all that work and coaching. But it's been absolutely fantastic. And if I could just a quick say to everyone who's watching tonight, if you can hit that subscribe button, that would be amazing. And also check out David Perel's channel as well if you're not already subscribed. But I doubt there'll be many who haven't already subscribed to your channel after seeing the interview today. So this very quick last minute question: what's your next race commitment coming up this year?
Monza next week. So Monza next week, come back for European Le Mans. We're leading the championship there. It's tied. There's 2 rounds to go between us and a Porsche. So that's it's going to be tough. They have a lot of top speed, and we better in the corners. And now we're going to a power track, so that's going to be interesting. But yeah, then I come back for a week, and then it's the Spa 24 hours, and then the immediate week after that is the European Le Mans final. So.
That's busy. It's very nice when you can just roll it off the tongue and say, I'm going to Monza next week for a bit of work there, you know.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well, we wish you all the best for a successful and a safe season. You have to go on these wonderful races, and I'm sure we'll be seeing many more podiums, and you'll be bringing back many more trophies in the near future.
Let's
hopefully
so.
get to see you again in person at the events maybe next year as things start to get back.
Absolutely.
It's been absolutely fantastic. Pleasure to have you, and I'll just very quickly stay on the line as we finish the show. But to everyone who's been watching, you've been seeing the legend.
Thank you.
That is David Perel. Drive fast.
Thank you, everyone.
Try not to crash. Bye-bye.